The storm arrived faster than the forecast predicted. By the time the first warning came through the radio, the waves were already crashing against the rocks below the lighthouse. The wind howled across the cliffs like a living thing, shaking the metal railings and rattling the old glass windows. I was alone on the island. That wasn't unusual. The lighthouse was mostly automated now. My job was simple: check the systems once a week, make sure the generator worked, and leave the next morning. But the storm ruined that plan. The small supply boat that dropped me off had already turned back hours earlier. Now the sea was impossible to cross. So I stayed inside the lighthouse tower. The wind screamed outside. Rain slammed against the windows. Every few seconds lightning lit the ocean in flashes of white light. Around midnight the power flickered. The generator kicked in a moment later, filling the building with a low mechanical hum. I walked up the spiral staircase to check the light mechanism at the top of the tower. Everything looked normal. The beam rotated slowly, sweeping across the black ocean. Then lightning flashed again, and for just a moment I saw something in the water. A small boat, drifting between the waves. I leaned closer to the window. Another flash. The boat was closer now, too close to the rocks. I grabbed the binoculars hanging near the control panel and focused on it. It was a wooden rowboat, old, paint peeling. There was someone inside, a man sitting completely still, head down. The waves pushed the boat toward the cliffs. I grabbed the radio to call the Coast Guard. Static. The storm had completely killed the signal. Another lightning flash lit the ocean. The boat had stopped moving, not drifting, just sitting there, in the middle of the storm. That didn't make sense. Waves that size should have thrown it against the rocks already. I lowered the binoculars and watched with my own eyes. The lighthouse beam passed over the boat, and the man inside slowly raised his head. Even from that distance I could see his face. Pale. Too pale. And he was staring directly at the lighthouse. At me. The wind slammed against the tower and the light flickered for a second. When it came back, the boat was gone. Just empty waves. I told myself I imagined it. Storms play tricks on your eyes. But then something hit the lighthouse door below. A heavy impact, like someone had thrown their entire body against the metal. I froze. Another impact. Bang. The door shook in its frame. No one should have been able to reach the island. Not in that storm. The third hit was slower, more deliberate. Bang. Then silence. I walked slowly down the spiral staircase. Every step echoed through the tower. When I reached the bottom floor, the door was still closed, locked from the inside. But something was wrong. Water was slowly spreading across the floor. Seawater, dripping from the door frame, as if someone soaking wet was standing on the other side. Then 3 slow knocks came from the metal. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't answer. The lighthouse beam rotated again above me, sending light through the storm outside. And then a voice came through the door. Quiet, calm. I know you saw me. I didn't answer. My hand was still on the staircase railing and I could feel it shaking slightly from the wind hitting the tower outside. The water on the floor kept spreading slowly across the concrete like someone on the other side of the door was dripping constantly. Then the voice came again, calm and patient. Open the door. The storm roared around the lighthouse and for a second lightning flashed through the small window beside the entrance. The metal door looked normal, but the water underneath it was moving slightly like something outside had shifted its weight. I forced myself to speak. There's no dock here. No one can reach the island in this storm. For several seconds there was no reply. Then the voice answered quietly. You watched me. My stomach tightened. The memory of the rowboat returned instantly. The pale face looking up at the tower. I stepped closer to the door but kept my distance from the handle. The water had already reached the middle of the room. Another knock came from the other side, but this time it wasn't on the door. It was lower, like someone tapping slowly against the metal near the floor. Knock, knock, knock. You shouldn't have used the light, the voice said softly. A loud crack of thunder shook the entire tower and for a moment the electric lights flickered again. I looked toward the staircase leading up to the lantern room where the lighthouse beam rotated across the sea. That's when I realized something that made my chest tighten. The light had stopped moving. The beam was frozen, pointing in one direction out toward the ocean. The motor that turned it had gone silent. I slowly looked back at the door. "What do you want?" I asked. There was a pause, and then the voice answered almost gently. The light turned on me. My heart began racing. "What does that mean?" Another lightning flash lit the small window beside the door, and for the first time I saw something move outside. A shadow passing slowly across the glass. Too tall to be someone standing normally. The voice spoke again, but now it sounded closer to the metal. "The sea can hide things if it stays dark." My throat felt dry. "What things?" For several seconds there was only the sound of the storm and the waves crashing against the rocks below the lighthouse. Then the voice whispered something that made every muscle in my body lock. "Things that should not be seen." Another loud impact hit the door, suddenly making me jump backward. This time the entire frame bent slightly inward. The water pouring under the door increased, like something outside had pressed its full weight against it. Then came a scraping sound along the metal. Slow, heavy, like something dragging itself upward along the outside of the lighthouse wall. The sound climbed higher and higher until it reached the level of the window. Lightning flashed again, and the entire tower filled with white light for a split second. I saw the reflection clearly in the glass. A hand pressed against the outside of the window, long, thin, pale, and the fingers were far too long to belong to a human. The voice came again, but now it wasn't outside the door anymore. It sounded like it was coming from the walls of the lighthouse itself. "Turn the light off."